years, 2.5 years, I guess. I guess there was a little overlap there. And it was right when COVID started. And I was in a studio apartment and I was in Argentina at the time. We had a very strict lockdown, one of the longest and strictest in the world. We couldn't go outside. We couldn't do anything. And for a very long time, 6, 7 months. And I knew that there were people suffering everywhere, and I felt like I was wasting my time and energy, and I wanted to be of service. I wanted to help, so I reached out to my some of my nonprofit organizing contacts in different countries around the world, and said, "Look, who's falling through the cracks where you are? Who do you wish you could help, but you just don't have the time and energy to do it because you're working on all these other things? There are people that are not getting the attention that they need to get through what they're going through. So send me the ones who are suffering the most." And I didn't quite know what I was getting myself into, to be honest. I really didn't. But I felt like I've been through a lot of grief and very challenging, dark challenges in my life. And I thought, I have some skills and understanding here. And if nothing else, I can walk with them, through this grief. And so I got some people recommended to me, and many of them, I would say probably 50% of them, we had our first chat when they were in bed. They couldn't even get out of bed. They were so much in despair. They had all lost someone, at least one person, sometimes several, a parent, a partner, maybe both, maybe a child to COVID. And in addition, they had lost their partner's income or their parents' income or their own income because businesses were closed. They lost their business. So, and suddenly they were the sole breadwinners in their extended family, that not just them, but their kids or their, nieces and nephews, their sister, whatever it was. And so everybody was relying on them, and they didn't know how they were going to feed people. They didn't know how they were going to manage. They were so just so overwhelmed and overcome. And so honestly, in that kind of situation, the first step is to coax them to get up and take a shower, to go eat something, to go make a sandwich, to go make sandwiches for your family, just the most basic steps. And I talk to them, each client I talk to every day for 30 days.
What's the situation with you? Said you're now talking to people who are coping with the authoritarianism in the USA. So
Yes.
how does that compare to the because that is very severe what you're describing, the people in COVID.
Yes.
So the people in the USA situation, what sort of how does that compare to that level of depression? Have you have you found people who are, locked in bed because it's so
Yes.
terrifying for really?
Absolutely. Especially, I would say especially people in their 20s and 30s who have been working in climate. Maybe they got an environmental studies degree in college. They cared about the planet for their entire lives, and they've been working hard. They've been doing all these things, and then at some point they've either read the reports or whatever method they found to, maybe listen to the Great Simplification with Nate Hagens, whatever it is. Their eyes were opened and they are horrified, angry, full of rage, full of guilt for not doing enough, and mostly fear about their future. But it's just an incredible amount of despair. And honestly, I have talked to many climate workers who from bed, especially right after the recent COP gathering and other sort of events. And now that Trump's, we have something new every day to be in distress about in terms of the climate. And so they were literally in bed and thinking about, like, I can't go on. I can't do this work. I can't continue to beat my head against this wall. And what can I do instead? And how can I walk away from the thing that I've been most passionate about? And so walking through that process of saying, okay, well, maybe your ideas of what you were working toward are shifting, but the working toward can still happen. There's still life to be lived. There's still ways of being and connecting with each other that we can figure out and work with. Um, I think letting go of the idea that they can fix everything is just devastating. It's devastating. And especially for the young people, because they've got their whole lives in front of them and they just have been so committed to this idea that if we just work hard enough and get enough, you know, momentum going and make some big changes in policy that, the techno optimists think, oh, the tech is going to save us, and now they're recognizing, we can't come back from this level of warming and we can't, we are going to have to adapt. It is going to get harder for all of us. And that's the future we're facing, not a utopian, solar everywhere. It may be solar everywhere, but it's not going to be the utopian picture that they had all been growing up with, thinking that if you work in climate, this is what you can create, So that's its own kind of depression and devastation. And I wouldn't say it looks or sounds very different than the ones who were facing the death of their loved ones due to COVID. That is remarkably similar. It's the same type of thing. It's like, how can I go on? What's worth going on for? Uh, you know, Even some people that I talk to, parents who have kids, it's like they're in such dark despair and they have young kids. And they're like, I don't know what I'm preparing them for and how I can talk to them about things and how I can go on and pretend that everything is fine and we can continue to live the way we always were. And a lot of times it's one person in the family, one of the partners who really understands and recognizes what's happening, and the other is absolutely unable and unwilling to address it and believe it and talk about it. So they feel especially alone because they don't have anyone to talk to about it, and not even in their own house.
Oh
That's a
yeah,
that's a very big problem. That's a very common problem.
oh that I can understand. I mean, I mean, do many of them talk about Gaza? Do
Oh my
many of
gosh,
them?
yes, of course. That's a
Yeah,
huge part of it.
yeah,
Because and I mean, I've got Palestinian grandchildren and a beloved Palestinian Jordanian son-in-law, and it's a hugely painful thing. And so, yes, for young people, I especially think, but for people of all ages, but especially for young people who have, this is really their between Ukraine and Gaza. They just don't understand how the world can not jump in and save them, not stop it. And that really just obliterates their hope for themselves being in any kind of situation, feeling like if people don't have the humanity to save children from starvation, then what kind of future can we have? They're not the people that we humans are not acting in the way that I always thought we would in a crisis. That's been a huge, huge challenge.
yeah. Well, I see that as an essential stage in the shift, in the mindset shift. You have to go through the awareness of how inhumane we are at the moment
Yes,
before you can get to the return to humanity. And
yes.
so this is what I'm documenting at the moment because I'm seeing the shift happening. And what we've recorded, the bit of our conversation that we've recorded will be very helpful because you're sharing experiences of talking to lots of people who are going through the shift, basically, and
Yes.
waking up to the fact that where we thought we had a really nice world where we cared about each other, it is
Mm,
in fact ecocidal and it's engineering our own extinction and
yes.
it's not very wise the way that we're going. So that realization is the first step in dismantling things like the military industrial complex and the wealth supremacy hierarchy, which is not doing a which it's interesting how have you come across Gary Stevenson at all? He's he's a British economist who started he did his this is a rags to riches story
Mm,
and he wrote um he wrote a book called The Trading Game because he went into trading currencies and he can see that the global economy is collapsing. He's seen that for over a decade. So he bets on the continuation of the collapse, and he's made millions
Mm.
for the bank that he worked with, and now he's out of banking, and he's runs this YouTube channel called Gary's Economics, teaching
Okay.
people how economics works and why it's failing us, and
Yes.
how it ignores wealth inequality, and that is a key thing in degrowth, that we have to dismantle the wealth supremacy hierarchy because we're so subservient to those with wealth. It's and they're the ones that are really killing us and killing our humanity.
Yes.
So we have to stand up to them. And he's wonderful. He's got a lovely Cockney accent, and he talks so honestly. He's so clearly genuine that he's got a huge following now. I think he's, about 1.5 million following his YouTube
Oh,
channel,
wow. Okay.
which is very significant. And the message is getting through to our politicians in the UK. Now, because I think the USA has done us a huge favor with Trump because
Yeah.
that's the wake up call for us because we're headed in exactly the same direction.
Right.
And we've got Nigel Farage quite capable of doing the same
Yes.
similar
Yes. Yeah.
stuff to what
Mhm.
Trump has achieved. But Trump is just a symptom. He's a symptom of
Yes.
what's wrong. He's not the problem himself. He's got loads of people backing him and financing him and
Yes. Exactly.
enabling him. So it couldn't happen with it's nothing to do with a single leader. It's all to
Right.
do with the mindset that we've got that comes with the wealth. You know, we
Right.
teach our children to try and climb up the wealth ladder, and
Yes, we
that
do.
so ecologically damaging.
Yes. Well, and all of it is, there are people waking up to all of it. There have been people who've been awake to it for a long time, who felt powerless to really change anything, but so are more focused on quietly creating their own localized economy or whatever it might be to sort of counteract whatever is going on a global scale. And localization is obviously where everything's going to be shifting. So I think that, yeah, this is a wake up call for Europe for sure. Watching what's happening in the US and all the events that are happening in the world, whether it's a hurricane or a flooding or whatever it might be, it's all making us realize that people who never thought they were at risk for any of those things or collapse of their economy or whatever, um, are waking up to the fact that all kinds of things are possible that we never imagined were possible. And it's not necessarily that they're facing it with fear, but they have a sense of anxiety about what could happen where they are. And some people are so paralyzed by it, it turns into fear, and they're so paralyzed by the combination of what I call desperalysis, despair and paralysis, right? You feel all the emotions and you feel powerless to do anything. And so you just continue to go through the motions of your everyday life and try not to think too much. You just try to distract yourself as much as possible. And it's easy to do because everywhere you look, everyone else is doing the same thing, you know? So why should you change everything in your world if nobody else seems to be changing the way they live? And this just kind of perpetuates this cycle of inaction and inability to address what's happening.
Why I blame our intellectuals and our educators for the situation we're in because they're perpetuating the mindset that clings to the wealth hierarchy.
Yeah, and I talked to a lot of
Learn a lot
educators
from it.
who I talked to a lot of educators who are feeling very guilty about that, who spent 30 years teaching kids, teaching college or high school or even elementary, and feeling like, they did what they were told to do. They did what they were supposed to do. They followed the curriculum, they worked hard, they were of service, and now they're very much questioning the value of what they taught, and worrying that, they contributed to the problem and unwittingly, and it breaks our heart.
Well, I'm still waiting to see. I've been lobbying Oxford University because I live near Oxford for a
Uh-huh.
lot for years, and so there's one or two particular names that I have emailed repeatedly over the years, saying, look, we've got a ecocidal and genocidal socioeconomic model.
Yes.
And interestingly, this Gary Stevenson and Kate Rayworth, who you've probably heard of, Donut
Yes.
Economics,
Yes.
well,
Sure.
both of them studied at Oxford University. And
Okay.
yet Oxford University is still teaching growth economics without any imagination. And
Wow.
I think it's shameful, really, that uh, such a prestigious university is unable to think outside the box of growth
Well,
economics.
and they're not alone. All the Ivy Leagues in the US, everyone's still doing the same old, even though many of them, especially in economics, as you say, they understand that this can't continue forever. And yet they're not changing their curriculum, they're not changing their talking points.